Good evening everyone, and welcome to the Alfa Romeo Museum. We begin today our sixth season of our Backstage lectures, and it's nice to start, let's say, well, that normally the witnesses of the people who have worked for Alfa Romeo and who have been featured are complementing our lectures. In this case, however, the protagonist is the seniors group of our brand, and we wanted to dedicate to this tool to keep it alive the memory and the passion of Alfa Romeo. Of course, the talk of the topic and associations and memberships in the company do not originate with the seniors group, but has its roots much further back. There was a lot to talk in the 20s and 30s about the quarto fronte, the fourth front, so what was not production, not design, not even a business aspect or the management of the company, but it was about the relationship with the workers. Of course, situations have changed over the years. The reasons why some forms of association were founded or disbanded varied as well, but already the whole world revolved around the after workers. So Alfa Romeo already in the 20s and 30s in the vanguard. Theaters were built, facilities were built, I would say worlds and initiatives were inaugurated, but above all, a certain freedom of action was always left, which allowed even activities whose seed had been sown by the company and in the company to expand outwards, to grow and to arrive at their own dignity. Now, however, let's move on a bit. We come to the Second World War, which for Alfa Romeo coincides with a moment of great transformation from a factory into a major automobile industry. Transformation of production, transformation of the market. And of course, in Alfa Romeo, you also create different worlds, different relationships with the employees, and especially you realize how the relationship with the employees has to be consolidated, but also that one of the fundamental elements of the brand is precisely the culture that passes around the brand and lives around the brand. And it is important that this culture is not limited to what happens outside, to the fans, the customers, people who study a company, but also enhance inside, to bring together all those who for Alfa Romeo had worked and very often, as we will see in a moment, spent. And we will also see a very interesting quote from the then president who says that in some cases, someone put Alfa Romeo before their families and devoted all the energy to make the company flourish. But we are talking about that period of transformation that Alfa Romeo told in so many ways, and I want to show you a short video that talks about the transformation between the Portello and Arese and tells a little bit the atmosphere, the moment in which then the senior group, today Alfa Romeo Senior Group, was founded. We didn't go to school yet. We only played, and by playing, we learned without knowing it. We liked to look at the figures, and we flipped through the Correrino, an encyclopedia for kids. It was right up there that we met these chimneys, and under a picture there was a quote, a big Italian automobile factory, Alfa Romeo de Portello, near Milan. At the Portello, now inside Milan, we were to find ourselves many years later, behind the camera. This time we were the one photographed, with new images, perhaps the last of the Portello that had reached the height of its productive possibilities. But the grey photograph we had gone looking for before we left for Milan, among the books and things from childhood, to find there perhaps an inspiration, was no longer there. No longer was the encyclopedia left under the rubble of the last war. But that meaning, what we wanted to add to the old picture, what was found here precisely, the great image now fresh and current and matured by the day within us. So we were not surprised to encounter at the Portello that solemn patina that time gives to certain old things to keep them alive and warm. The Portello, the factory, tasted a little of Venice, of Siena. Inside, the patina pulverized, spreading through the air and becoming ambient. You could breathe it. It was the atmosphere of a daguerreotype. We would not have been surprised finding silent men in ash-gray dusters made austere by their Umberto moustaches beside the sunny presses, and next to them the heroes of our father's youthful years, Antonio Ascari, Campari, Sivocci, the three musketeers of Alfa. Together, ageless, out of the bounds of time, Fagioli, Fangio, Caracciola, e Farina, Varzi and Nuvolari, whose bolides, in the form of terracotta bowls, sped the summer on our Adriatic sand circuit. Yet, years had passed since the distant 1909, the birth of the Portello, and history more than once had added its fiery mark on the imprint of the red-hot forges. In 1914, halting a production of 350 cars a year, the Portello gave the war bullets and tractors. With peace, Alfa Romeo's 20 golden years. With laurels, international markets. And then again, the war. Between the bombings and the Portello was a pile of rubble. Reborn where they were and how they were, the factories still prepare engines for victories. Now, in the daguerreotype climate, Giuliettas were coming to life. A prized work of craftsmanship had quickly turned into a vast mass production, winding at a convulsive, sobbing pace in the crampedness of the Portello. There was a need for an outlet. Even to those of us who were messy and sympathetic to the romantic pages, it was clear that the facilities and space were now inadequate. The number of cars to be built for the growing demand was growing. So, to keep up with the times, to escape the city's grip, industrial Arese Pole was being built. And so, Alfa Romeo realizes that it is looking forward to a new world, a new generational change. Let's think that the construction of Arese was deliberated in 56, so at the dawn of the 50s already, and they were looking very far ahead into a world that will leave behind something that had been a pre-war thing. And what used to be a matter of common sense, that of valuing memory and former employees, instead becomes a business input. So even before the 1952 Seniors Group was born, in December 1951, a seniority certificate ceremony is organized. It's kind of the embryo of what would become the Seniors Group. And in this case, there are speeches by Alessio, Quaroni, Pasquale Gallo. In short, we're talking about the speeches of the top managers of Alfa Romeo, who were being involved because they were also, to a large extent, the architects of what was happening. And in particular, we hear about the spirit of the factory. Alessio's speech is handwritten by him on a series of notes, and then it is reworked, it is rearranged, and it becomes a very heartfelt speech, very strong, but one that at a certain point wants to tell what for him is the spirit of the factory. That is that element that must not be lost of the corporate culture and workforce. A great Russian writer narrates about the agony of a battleship, the Petropavlos, on the eve of the Battle of Sushina. In the approach to the fight, he felt bilges quivering from the machines, towers, and ferve and ignite a new life. A collective exaltation from all, from the highest to the humblest crew members, would perhaps, a few hours later, give their lives in Holocaust and called it the spirit of the ship. Now, I tell you that there is also a spirit of the factory that hovers in the remotest meanderings of the plant, uniting the manager with the apprentice, the specialist with the laborer, the technician with the administrative worker, in the eternal quest to perfect one's craft, in a constant yearning to surpass oneself in order to achieve and consolidate the progress of that work environment on which individual elevation, confidence in one's work, and serenity in the family environment depend. The patrols of seniors we celebrated are the superb vanguards. They're the faithful pioneers of the army of workers who have carried the Alfa Romeo banner over 40 years. And Alessio wants to emphasize this part by making comparisons that are meant in a way to acknowledge their role to each one, but without taking away the professionalism from anyone. And in this piece, we see what is still the spirit of Alfa Romeo, this ability that the company has always said to create a factory spirit and to make sure that people could give their best because they were rightly motivated and recognized for their professionalism. Elder Patrol, you are the heirs and defilements of that superb Renaissance craftsmanship in which the Baseggio, creator of that miracle of marble lacework that is the Doge's Palace in Venice, signed himself as a stonemason, who called himself an engraver like Cellini, to Bernini, who was a surveyor of the Tiepolo, who boasted decorator to the courts of the Gonzagas, the Roman pontiffs and the kings of France, of the Galileo, who was a lecturer in the physics at the University of Padua, and from whom the world of art, science and technology took its start for today's successes and unfailing future promise. Alfa Romeo sees in you the repositories of the perennial lifeblood that animates its victorious rise and the symbolic figurations of the seniority diploma you have received. The columns stand for the solidity of the building you have built. The ivy, the swaddles of the faithful love with which you have surrounded yourselves, while the pink mountain stands out on the spires of the Madonnina, so dear to your hearts as Milanese, for the unfailing, imperishable affirmations of Alfa Romeo. There was still some rhetoric left in the air, but basically there was just a desire to recognize and to dignify a group that was going to be born shortly thereafter. Of course, a press release was issued telling what had taken place, telling about the ceremony for the awarding of certificates, and in which there is a desire from the very beginning to point out that some of the people who were awarded for their loyalty were not simply, in quotes, employees, but they had already very important and recognized names, like test pilots, Guidotti, Sanesi. So they all constituted this patrol of seniors who were supposed to help build the future of Alfa Romeo that was profoundly changing. Obviously, Pasquale Gallo also has his say and responds to the invitation with some statements that he makes in a very personal way. I have the pleasure of presiding over this meeting, which intends and wishes to honor the Alfisti who have given their spirit and their labor for over 20 years, toiling, hoping, fearing, but who have been able to see Alfa again after the immense misfortune of the war, rise and launch itself into the future. To these workers, I address myself, and when I say workers, I mean everyone, from the armed workers to the thinking workers, from the most modest to the highest, from the laborer to the manager, that is, to all those who, here in this factory, have lavished their strength, have lavished their ability to lead the company to where the company is today. Moreover, Pasquale Gallo will be a recurring character in the early years of the senior groups and will continue to have a fairly close correspondence with Bianchi, and especially will continue to be a conduit for inviting great people to the early events of the senior group. But we will see this later. And again, I'm not saying that I would like to summon them on stage because they are already here, but Aldo Berselli, who's the president of the seniors group today, and Carlo Agazzi, who has written, in addition to his institutional role in the association, has also drafted a booklet on the history and activities of the seniors group that today we are also going to explore. Aldo, I would like to ask you to make a greeting. You're almost the host today. Thank you. Well, welcome everybody. I'm super happy to see you here, to meet you and see you that you are so numerous. So I also thank you on behalf of the President's Committee and the Board of Directors, which today is represented almost in full. Well, this meeting has been on our minds for some time now. Well, our minds and Lorenzo's mind, because we had been circling around it for a while. The spark that made that made us decide to prepare this meeting was that document that is the subject, the final subject of this day. Today, we are going to see a little bit of our history, which in part you have already started to see with some footage, with some testimonies, and some friends. And we're very happy that this is finally happening because, as I said, it had been dancing in our heads for a while. So we're here now. Okay, so now let's move forward by presenting this book that has not only the origins, but also the activities and the future of the group. But it is really from the origins that I would like to start. So, the group was officially founded in 1952. So please pass the microphone and let's start telling how. What was the context and the reason why the group was born? Well, we have to place the birth in a historical period that saw Italy in a phase of post-war recovery, economic boom, a frenzy of growth that made, I wouldn't say burst, but multiplied the forces within the various companies. And as far as Alfa is concerned, the 19th of December 1952, the group was born with a purpose of increasing the spirit of attachment to the company and also increase the level of loyalty because in a time, as I said before, of great development, so there was on one hand a huge demand for work and therefore there was competition among the various companies. So to keep your employees maybe after they had been trained by years of apprenticeship and work and so on was something that was necessary. And then the newly formed senior group of Alfa Romeo joined the National Association of Older Workers, NANDA. Of course, we changed form, and from a lot of members in the boom years and afterwards, now the numbers are smaller, but the spirit remains the same from the 50s. Now it is a third sector organization and is qualified as a social promotion organization. And it's basically the hook that we still have at the national level and allows us to give and to receive inputs from the outside to spread some social culture. And so we continue like this. When the senior group is founded, there's a fairly combined action of the group to try to establish itself. On the one hand, the Director General Secretariat begins to invite both the press and the, let's call them partners, to share the news, so much so that during the first meetings, telegrams of congratulations are read coming in from politics, from IRI, from the groups related to other companies. There is a whole group which has a close relationship also with Enel, and of course it was also published within the company, like a classic poster of the time in which the birth of the board of directors is precisely published, and workers were invited to join and participate. And like all associations, the first statute of the group is also published, which has in itself, like all statutes, a whole series of rules on the functioning of the association, but which also emphasizes in the first point what the fundamental purpose of the association should be. Morally assisting its members, seeking to make prevail a sense of understanding and justice, with rights that must be recognized to those who have contributed for a lifetime by their intelligence and honesty to make the name of Alfa Romeo popular and great. And the membership cards start to be issued, and we will see the number 1, as we will see, is given to the very first honorary member, Pasquale Gallo. In this case, we see the double face on the invitations that were made at the time to the group's events. On one hand, there was the poster addressed to the workers, and on the other hand, the invitation that the Alfa Romeo General Management sent to outsiders, so that this reality could go out of the confines of the factory and also be recognized as a cultural association in its own right. Well, and this is taken from your excerpt. There was also a possibility of applying for membership to the seniors group. How did it work in the beginning? And what kind of hold it had on the first workers? Well, the first impact was very positive, because also looking at the number of members, well, you can see that in the early years it was very popular. You had to queue up, for example. When I turned 20 years of seniority in 78, I had to wait to be enrolled, to become a member. And also the document talks about membership application. So you had to be also confirm your membership, like as if there were a selection, but anyone could ask to be made member. Clearly the number of members then changed. But the thing that came out from the analysis is that also the bylaws probably didn't provide for quiescent members, that is, retired members. It was made for working people, to retain working people. So the very possibility of becoming a member was almost negotiated, so the quiescent members in the first years could participate in the life of the group, but only as an outsider. They had no rights to vote or to run for office. So we went on about 20 years, 21, 22 years, and this number of people were increasing more and more. So not working people, retired people that had represented a significant number had no right. So there was a moment when Anna forced the Alfa Romeo group to change its bylaws and allow in the steering group to have retired seniors. Well, initially there was a great leaning towards the future, and even more than 10 years later, Pasquale Gallo continues to write with the group letters, but also the tone changes and it becomes a little bit nostalgic, almost wanting to use the group to train new generations of employees. Not in the sense of formal schooling, but in the sense of initiating the culture of Alfa Romeo and making sure that this heritage of culture could be passed on from generation to generation so that the brand identity would not be lost. And when one is old, and I am also old by date of birth, memories induce emotion and affection towards elders of various degrees and young people who of the elders will be the tenacious and faithful successors in the ever-hardening toil to secure a firm future for the company that unites us all as members of a same family. And also, from the group, there is a heartfelt plea for the group itself and its own activities to serve as a parachute or anchor for Alfa Romeo. That is, the company must form a healthy environment in which not only the company must thrive, but also the workers themselves. Here, there is no Christ saying, Lazarus, get up and walk. Here, there are men who have said to themselves, first Alpha, and afterwards our families. And these workers, old and young, and citizens listening to me, is no small thing. In 2 years, the company, to the credit of everyone from the most modest laborer to the highest executive, has not been able to reach the turning track, but has passed a shunting park full of switches that were operated with mastery, because from the chief shunter nailed in his control cabin to all his staff scattered over the tracks, one will was sovereign to reach the goal, that is the running track, which means to make Alpha firmly settled for the good of all Alpha people and their families. Times are tough, senior colleagues, and you know it because experience has made you shrewd and benevolent. And you should explain to the young people to whom the natural impatience can sometimes be a veil to the eyes. Well, this, senior colleagues, is your task, indeed your duty. And here, again, it is a letter with Alfa Romeo management. Gallo is given the #1 card, honorary membership, and in a sense it symbolizes the connection with the company. But at this moment, the group also begins to have a life of its own. So it's not only the association, recruiting members, being recognized by the factory, not only the desire to pass on Alfa Romeo and to aim for even more ambitious goals, but there's also a normal social life. So there are the first activities, the first events, the first occasions, also to offer an activity and give the members and associates a chance to be together. And that is also one of the key parts of our activity even today. Yes, let's say we are anchored to Alfa Romeo in our heart. So we are all Alfisti. However, the group had the strength to continue and to go beyond the connection with Alfa. If we count the years, we have done 34 years with Alfa Romeo as the parent company, and the other 37, 38 with other companies. Our strength was to remain an association and still remain united regardless of the reference companies that clearly allowed us to do our business as today. It's not an exception because normally our relationships are more than good and constructive. There were also some playful initiatives, if you will. Yes, I must say that playful activities that are being carried out by the group were also inherited, let's say, from the relations from the companies. I mean, like social relations. But once that possibility was closed, happily, there was a way to organize these initiatives through tourism, through art, organizing lunches and so on. to keep us together. So these are the bonds, the glue of all the members that allow us to go on despite the fact that more than 30 years have passed without the mother, so to speak. So let's keep in mind that we are 1,739. Well, last year we lost 111 members, but they correspond to 6%. And after 2020 and 2021, with problems also related to COVID-19, when we had a surge of losses, we are holding on a pretty good figure. Let's say that we are one of the most numerous groups, of the groups that make up Landa. So we must be happy with this situation. And here's another aspect, which is the participation of those we called I don't have the word. Fans? Yes, fans. Sympathizers. That are about 100. And this gives us hope. It means integration with the territory, not only in the old corporate perimeter. So it's a new lymph. On the other hand, to survive, transformations are always necessary. You've made new places, new activities, but I would like to call at this point Ivana Martignoni to have her testimony, as you suggested. I've not heard it yet, so I'm very curious. First of all, good afternoon to everybody. I wanted to thank all of you, and especially Mr. Aldo Berselli and the president of the Alfa Romeo Senior Group, Mr. Ragazzi, who today again invited me to this historic venue to express the emotions and motivations that make me and my husband Celeste, in my opinion, excited to be part and to participate in the various initiatives proposed that are both touristic and cultural. I am not a former employee of Alfa Romeo, but my dear father was. My father, during his more than 30 years of work, was able to pass on to me precisely those fundamental values such as humility, dedication to one's work, and the importance of family. Values that, in my opinion, have made this reality great in the world, the reality which is Alfa Romeo. It was in this spirit that we began to participate to your initiatives. I met many fellow adventurers, many with whom we shared cultural moments, alternating with informal and light-hearted moments that led us to like, between meals, a pleasant company as a great team of great people, people who have not forgotten their most significant starting point, which is where they come from, and that is Cagranda, a big family. And it is this reflection that my husband and I look forward to participating in the coming years to the various events that the senior group will offer us. Thank you for your testimony that tells how there is a continuity of the group. A group that, Aldo, I'm speaking to you now, has two sides. One which is more institutional, more passionate, which is to pass on the culture of Alfa Romeo, and on the other hand, also to be the tool for socialization of the members, and that allows to have a series of activities that keep the group close and allows everyone to exchange opinions, but also to help each other. Yes, I would invert these two things. So just to achieve the goal of keeping this alpha spirit, we try to invent, to design initiatives that keep people together in friendship, in tranquility, for the very goal of maintaining this spirit that for us is always present and we would like to maintain. And your activities, in addition to the more playful ones that you organize at a truly remarkable pace, also revolve around some institutional moments that are unmissable. And the 2-3 key moments are the social luncheon. Maybe we will talk about this year's luncheon, and the Holy Mass. These are two moments that we have inherited from the previous management, two moments where there is a high attendance by the people, the members, family members, and also some friends. We have tried to keep them always alive despite the fact that time goes on. And even recently, maybe, well, the number of people present was a little bit decreasing due to natural reasons, but the quality, both of the Holy Mass and the social luncheon, was always high. And we always had positive feedbacks from all the participants. By the way, the Mass, apart from being an important institutional event, and let's face it, it's a very Milanese moment of your activity, pointed out, as Ragazzi pointed out to me, it's a very heartfelt moment, and also on Alfa Notizie, some time ago, a beautiful piece was published, an open letter that I would ask to Paola Milan to come and read. Thank you, Lorenzo. Good afternoon, everybody. Memories, a life in 1 hour. I was at the Mass for the deceased in Sant'Ambrogio. Outside, on the churchyard, many people. I too mingle among them, familiar faces, faces that I don't know. The new friends who have come to make remembrance. I look for the most familiar faces, the friends of many years ago, who have aged, some with faces marked perhaps by some suffering, some still brave and gritty, but almost all grey or white. I look for many others, and my question receives the same answer. They died, and this is the sad reality that brought us here today. We want to remember our deceased friends. So, as you wait for the celebration to begin, the fondest memories of those 40 years you spent at Alfa come to mind. It was 6 o'clock when my mother opened the front door that morning. A greeting, a kiss, and was immediately the darkness of the fog. I was going to catch the streetcar to go to the Alfa Romeo Apprentice School. It was my first day, October the 1st, 1940. And it was like that for many years. Alfa Romeo was at the time synonymous with safety, prestige, certainty in the future. We were all young then. We were many young people working hard. School and work, work and school. So many shavings, so much filing, so much toil. And then the departments, heat treatment, foundry, molding and others. For months, for years, joy and sorrow, disappointment and hope, often mixed, but always we were committed and determined not to give up. Then the first jobs, the first important assignments. Such good times, always united, together, helping each other and consoling each other when we were friends. Then, 48 or rather 68 came difficult years, freedom, social achievements, equality. And again, the years of lead, of the Red Brigades. Finally, the slow but inexorable decline of the factory. In 1981, tired, disappointed, abandonment, giving up of everything that had been my life. Friends, however, remain. All this passed before my eyes in 1 hour. I saw again that boss, that colleague, each of them reminded me of something, a fact, an event. Many, I found them again, and that is why I'm glad I was there too, in Sant'Ambrogio, Ferdinando Rovida. It's a beautiful portrait of the reasons and the bond that people can have with their company and their colleagues. And let's say it's a very deep attitude that tends to value what the companies and colleagues have been. The list of the great or little Alfa Romeo people would be too long for one day, too long for the whole backstage review probably, but there are some people that today we want to remember. You have chosen two of them, and it is a pleasure for me to tell something about them. So I would ask Federico to come here and tell something about his dad, Guido Moroni. Thank you. I will read the passionate and timely remembrance that appeared on Alfa Notizie in June 2014. It was written by Angelo Linati, an important person who is not here today for health reasons. He is largely over 90, but his presence was important, and I remember that he made, well, a great picture of my dad, and he left me moved. Guido Moroni left us on April the 9th at the age of 90. Thus, the last of Alfa Romeo's great test drivers also passed away. Born in Milan back in 1924, he joined Alfa Romeo at the age of 14 as an apprentice in the company school in September 1938. He finished his 3-year vocational training and was first placed as a draftsman in the experience design department. Following his return from the wartime period he spent at Horta, he found in 1947 a place as test driver to the truck sector. In 1950, here he was in the car testing experience service with Salvo Sanesi. And in this sector, Moroni found his definitive position, contributing to the formation and affirmation of that group of test drivers who were fundamental to the achievement of the reliability and safety records of the Alfa cars of the time, the different Giulietta and Giulia models and the sports cars. Heading the testing department until 1997, but he was then appointed as manager of the vehicles sector of the research development in 1982, a position he held until his retirement in 1987 after 49 years of service. But the value of the person, his valuable know-how in Alfa, his innate professional skills meant that Fiat kept him on as a consultant for another 10 years during the delicate period of Alfa Fiat transition. To his undisputed technical skills should also be added his innate and well-known friendliness and his joyfulness. He always managed to crack a smile and end the conversation with sympathy and serenity, so that he was well received by everybody. a member of our corporate seniors group since 1958. In May 1981, he was awarded the Gold Star for Labor Merit by the President of the Republic with the title of Master of Labor in recognition of his skill and industriousness in operations. At the Lambrate ceremony were numerous, many Alfa fans and many personalities and associations from the automotive world, his world, to pay tribute to one person, Guido Moroni, historic test driver of Alfa Romeo. Dear Guido, we are especially close in their grief to your son Federico and your loved ones, and to you, our remembrance, and that of all the scattered and immense multitude of Alfa people. Well, I think it's enough. So I would like to add now my comment regarding my connection with the senior group. Well, it is, so to speak, symbolized in the fact that at his death, the retention of his membership was accepted. So I wanted in the header to have Guido Federico Moroni. In this very sense of continuity, he, who has done practically almost 60 years in Alfa Romeo, I, who have made now more than 40 in the world of Alfa Romeo, even though I'm not an employee. And this remembrance, well, I wanted to add that yesterday, curiously, it would have been 100 years since Dad's birth. And it's my way of interpreting not the date of birth, because everyone knows when it's their birthday, but having died at 90, it's also 10 years since his passing away, and we remember him every year, the 9th of April, because the message of the Alfa Romeo test drivers, because Dad was fortunate enough to have a long life and to be the last of the representatives, but actually, the know-how is of everybody, because Alfa Romeo is a big family. And in this year, by the way, well, we also celebrate the 30th anniversary of the death of Bruno Bonini, who had been another great test driver of the, he was part of the so-called Magnificent Seven of Alfa Romeo. So we will remember Guido and Bruno this year in the sign of Alfa Romeo, two parallel lives, in the life that goes on. Thank you. Thank you, Federico. The other character that instead we want to pay tribute to today with Paolo is a character to whom the museum is linked perhaps even more than to the senior group, because it was Luigi Fusi, the father of the museum, the one who thought it up, wrote the text, did a lot, as well as having written what, for many, or for everyone, is the Bible of Alfa Romeo, which is his monumental book, Tutte le Alfa Romeo dal 1910, so all Alfa Romeo since 1910. This is an excerpt from Alfa Notizia number 5 from February 1999. Luigi Fusi. A long life spent for Alfa Romeo and to revive its history. Just over 2 years ago, namely on December the 27th, 1996, Luigi Fusi passed away. Born in Saronno on June the 6th, 1906, he joined Alfa at the age of 14 on February the 20th, 1920. His father had been working there since 1914 as a collaborating employee of Merosi, and particularly Jano, who liked and esteemed him. He collaborated on almost all Alfa Romeo cars from the 20s and 30s, following their testing and design. In 1955, he was appointed head of drawing control and held this position until 1961, when he retired. He remained as a consultant until celebrating the milestone in 1985 of 65 years of work with Alfa Romeo. Luigi Fusi and his enthusiasm were responsible for the setting up of the Alfa Museum, desired by the then President Luraghi. His research, often with collectors and enthusiasts around the world, made it possible to recover, restore, and reconstruct many of the cars and components which are displayed at the museum. He was author of several books, including the significant Alfa Romeo Tutte le Vetture dal 1910. Now, let's move on from this part of reminiscences and instead let's talk about some of other important activities that you carry on, Aldo. And in particular, your activity of membership contact through the awards that are given every year. We have here a roundup of pictures, and I would ask you to tell what were the last most important awards that you gave and in what events. Okay, you can see here the pictures of the last award ceremony that we did in the near Sala Giulietta for the eldest members of our group. It was a successful celebration that has a meaning which is trying to involve more and more even those who are very old, I would say. There was the participation of outsiders. In the photo, you can also see the representatives of Stellantis. So it was a moment of openness as well as of involvement of our members to our group. On that occasion, the seniors of the group were awarded. Other honors were given, such as 2 or 3 honorary members. You can see them here. And the 2 presidents, previous presidents, were honored, Restelli and Ainati. Restelli was also invited to this event today, but he could not be here because he had family problems. But it would have been a very important testimony because he held the presidency of the group for over 30 years. And it would have been very nice. But, well, it's almost a separate chapter. But now, Alfa Notizie also celebrated its birthday. It's a publishing initiative that obviously has a strong role in communicating with its members and in making the culture of Alfa. I have here the 0 issue of Alfa Notizie, and I would ask to read the part that I consider the most beautiful, the part where you try to involve the members group to participate to this operation. The newsletter stems from the need to have a constant, direct contact with our members in order to keep them updated on all our activities and initiatives. Since the assemblies cannot be attended by everyone, we would like to hope that after reading this short edition, which is actually a foreword to the actual newsletter, there will be not only members eager to actively collaborate, but also those who will send us suggestions, advice, news, and why not, even criticism. The letter will be used to improve ourselves and provide a service closer to the needs of members. So, please give your willingness to the realization of the newsletter. And the newsletter continued, well, struggling, to go on. With effort, it was then rewarded by the results, and for how many years now? Well, 26 or 27 this year. The issue is issue 82, that will have to come out soon, any day soon. But we struggle to keep the deadlines because we are always late, always late. But you have the ability not only to act as a newsletter to remind the activities of the group and also to remind about what happens to the members, but also to every time spread some Alfa Romeo culture and to publish some pieces like the ones that we have seen before. Yes, but looking at them one after the other, there are some topics that could be, so to speak, stitched together and could be the subject of a series of lectures like how the factory was organized, how certain processing evolved over time, how certain products, especially in the area of design, evolved. We had colleagues who, well, every time did their descriptions, which were somewhat biased because being an alpha man prevailed. Well, but putting all these articles one next to the other, they could originate the Alpha book. Yes, if we read them one by one, of course, each article has some inaccuracies or things that could be improved, but put together, they create a lot of material that can be spread also in terms of industrial culture. Well, we celebrated very important anniversaries. Well, 2 years ago now, the anniversary of the birth of the group, and again 2 years ago, the anniversary of the birth of Alfa Notizie, and of course, the group continues to live on. And I would ask now, what are the prospects for the future by making a premise? Among those who benefit from the senior group is first and foremost the museum. And when I say the museum, I mean the museum as a facility, but also the museum as the public who comes to the museum. We have shared many initiatives directly. We have done, in the past, tours together with former employees or current Alfa Romeo employees who could tell anecdotes. The seniors group is also the main mind, let's say, for all of our backstages, where we compare who might be the right person to talk about certain things, and we determine who to contact, maybe people who have not worked within a company or museum from a few years now. So, since our backstages are growing in number, this is very important because also thanks to you we can have first-hand accounts. But we have also had some more hands-on collaborations, like for example Giorgio Figliozzi, who I saw earlier, and he is certainly here, who not only is one of the protagonists of our backstages very often, because he combines competence with an innate speech ability that the audience really appreciates. But above all, he allowed us, through his work, to reorganize a large part of the archive related to some of the technical notes, of the technical drawings, in which it would have been, without the competence and expertise of those who had seen them firsthand, very difficult to understand them and place them in order. So this does not only arise from the activities of the museum, but also from the fact that we can organize more and more events about less known chapters. So that's also the reason why one of the backstages wanted to be dedicated to the seniors group, because the seniors group continues to be a key part of the backstage itself. It was important to devote an episode to telling what it was born of, and what it is now, the group. Aldo, where is it going now, the group? Well, let's make a step backwards. 10, 12 years ago, we were in a situation which was kind of difficult because there were no new memberships, because the factory was closed. People were aging. So we said, what should we do in order not to die? So we made some actions, especially by modifying the statute. So some novelty was introduced, like we reduced the time of seniority, we expanded also to family members the entry. We also involved supporters, and this allowed us to maintain a good vitality. So this is the part of the norms. Then at the same time, we also updated ourselves, both in the graphic design of the Alfa Notizie, which was modernized, also in the logo and in the communication, because we have also created a website. And then we have created a newsletter which once a month reaches our members digitally. So all these actions, from our point of view, were very helpful in maintaining a good membership level. So we tried to find new ways to update ourselves, and we're moving along these lines so that all our members are always happy to be part of the group. So this is one thing, and on the other hand, we're trying to get a little bit out of our sphere through external initiatives like conferences, meetings that we have done and we intend to continue to do with similar groups to our, with local realities like mayors, etc., to increase our visibility, not only internally but also outside, in order to make ourselves known. So this is our perspective. And to conclude, in these days, we have prepared a major program of tourism and culture that will be shortly communicated to all the members. It's very intense and rich, and we hope we will be able to complete it with the help of everyone. So, before I leave space to anyone who has something to say or wants to comment or share their thoughts, I'd like to thank several people. The first, of course, goes to the seniors group because of all that they did over the years and continue to do with the museum. Aldo Berselli, Carlo Agazzi, Paolo Milani, Federico Moroni, who have spoken. All of you who participated. Also, the voiceover of Leonora Ventura, who is a dear friend, and she's also a person who continues to give a lot to the seniors group, as her dad always did as well. And to conclude, where is Eleonora? I didn't see her anymore. But we should proceed to the official delivery of the brochure, the document we presented at the 70th anniversary, and the copy is officially delivered to the documentation center in order to be kept in the archives. So this is the document. It's a solemn moment, but it's also the spirit that should animate the museum and everything that revolves around the museum. I mean, the possibility of continuing to enrich the museum and the archive through the work of enthusiasts. We get a lot of donations, of testimonials, and many people work to try to pass on a piece of Alfa Romeo, sometimes a very important piece, sometimes simply a passionate piece, but this is how you build companies and the culture of the company. So thank you for this donation that will go in the archives. There is a dedication. So attached to the brochure, there is a dedication that contains the spirit with which we offer these to the museum. Who's going to read it? Paolo? It's a solemn moment. You should stand out. Stand up. So the Alfa Romeo Documentation Center, as you know, in 2022, our senior group has turned 70. At the same time, its news periodical, Alfa Notizia, 4-monthly magazine, passed 25 years of publication. These are two important anniversaries that we celebrated at the time and deserve to consolidate their memory, paying tribute to those who came before us and to all the former Alfa Romeo workers. We try to fulfill this objective by elaborating a brochure that sums up the history of the group, emphasizing some aspects of the life, a little bit of industrial history, some characters, simple human events, as well as the sacredness of work. On the occasion of the group's Backstage that is taking place, and I would add is ending, it's coming to an end, here at our historical museum, we are pleased to hand over a copy of the document so that it may be counted among the pages that remember even the simplest contribution of workers and their organization. For the good and success of Alfa Romeo, cordially the Alfa Romeo Arese Seniores Group. February 25th, 2024. Over to you. Thanks again from the museum and all who will consult it in the years to come. Well, thank you. Have a great day ahead, everyone.